Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Hon Ssemujju, okay? And in a studio that for once has 3 teachers, or 1 practicing teacher, 2 practicing teachers. A professor who I think is still my favorite economist. I used to have 2 favorite economists, but I'm not so sure I have 2 anymore. But welcome, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, to the gang once again. I beg your pardon?
You still have 1 economist.
Yes.
Good morning,
Good morning to you. And then Honorable Ssemujju will introduce his teacher.
Why?
Because you have said things about him before he arrived.
Yes, I told you, he told me, but he's now a private sector person.
And then I told you I'm also a private sector person.
No, you are maybe semi.
I beg your pardon. Soon you might say I also got money from
Cooperative. Do you have one?
No. So welcome to the Capital Gang, veteran Ona Pito or Ona, because you never say that Okomol.
Just
it's like when Ona Pito. You know when people say Ssemujju, so can they say Ssemujju and all these names. So welcome to Gang, sir.
Thank you. Good morning.
Benjamin Katana, welcome to Gang. Most welcome to have you once again, NUP.
My pleasure.
Yes. Agatha with an E. With an ER. Go to the microphone so I welcome you. Welcome to Gang.
Thank you, Oscar.
Yes.
To be here.
Yes. And we have another guest in the studio. Mercy Grace Munduru, Head of Programs, a lawyer, Action Aid International Uganda. You're most welcome to Gang today.
Thank you very much. Honored to be here.
Yes, so Honorable Ssemujju, the cooperatives, you take us through, because the Abdu is not here, but he's been saying this was really cooked up in Parliament, the report. Take us from the beginning, because it goes back to a report of, is it October 2023? And then culminating in the latest arrest of the Trade Permanent Secretary. How did this all start?
I have read 2 reports. The report of the Auditor General and then the report of the Parliamentary Committee on Trade, chaired by the Honorable Mpaka. In my view, one of the best chairpersons of committees. I was telling Katana before we came in that the trouble actually did not begin with the report of Parliament. The trouble began with the policy. Government came up with a
Capital Gang in association with Uganda Martyrs University in Kosi.
War claimants, people who lost their property during the Mr. Museveni's war, 1980-1986. But first of all, there was no list. The beneficiaries, in my view, reading both reports, were not known. But the policy came into being that we are going to compensate. So what then happened was that...
so there was a decision to compensate
cooperatives for what they had lost during the war.
Okay.
So that decision now is what government went to implement. So during implementation, because some of the cooperatives never existed, or like in cases I know, some of the owners of these cooperatives had even died. They were not there. So the people who are accused, and unfortunately, we are discussing this matter when people have a matter before court.
I think we're not discussing any new information.
Yeah. So if you read both the report of the Auditor General and the report of Parliament, what happened is that those who are involved in processing and verifying which cooperatives, some of the cooperatives did not come forward by themselves, but they were being enticed that Ssemujju Cooperative Union, there is money here.
You come.
Do you still exist? No, this cooperative was started by Professor Muhumuza, but he died, but his son lives in Canada. So can we get some people to go and resurrect it? So they go and they resurrect, then they come and make a claim. But those who are involved, I think, and if you read the report, because there was a new cooperative law made, I think, 2012, they are now re-registering these cooperatives under the new law. So they would go looking for a cooperative, identify some people who can claim that it was theirs, and then assign them a law firm. Then the paperwork would be done that we lost so much. Even if they lost nothing, they would now make some of the claims were actually fictitious, and then they are taken to finance, and eventually they are paid through a lawyer. Unfortunately, when you did the report, most of the payment made to the lawyers, the beneficiaries were receiving like a 5%. So they process 3.7, and then they give you. And I remember one MP told me, because if they have fished you from a village where you live, and they give you, even if it is 50 million, you will not ask how much money was approved for your cooperative. You will actually go back happy. So that's the bulk of the report. The specific accusation against the PS is that she was receiving money through her husband. So payments were being made to law firm, and then they would go to deposit a part of the money to the account of her husband. Obviously, the committee said she was the beneficiary. The husband was just being used as a conduit. In the case of the MPs, I think one of them is a lawyer, but there are also many other people who are mentioned in that report. I think the MPs who are mentioned were more than 40. I don't know if all of them are going to be taken, but there are about 40 MPs involved, because there was some serious work to go and look for these cooperatives where they existed. And where there are no people and they knew they existed. Then you look for the cooperative, but also you look for people to claim it, and then you resurrect it, get paperwork done, and then you present it for claim. So in the summary, that's what they report.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Are you people in Parliament hiding and waiting to or in fear of being arrested?
I don't know. In all these cases, I am not sure that everybody will be arrested. I was with a friend the other day, and they told me people are negotiating. For me, don't arrest me. For me, so people are making offers. Either I will be the one delivering Ichira to you in the next election. So I am not sure that everybody is going to be arrested, but you may also not have evidence against everybody. You can mention them in a report, because the reports of Parliament are not legal documents. For you politically, you can mention everybody who is mentioned. But when you go to assemble evidence, you may not have evidence against everybody. But there are many people who are mentioned.
Okay. Dr. Mumuza, that report also points out that Mrs. Sally Busurwa also had a verification committee of her own in parallel to the one appointed by Cabinet.
Yeah, I think that's why now the
governance issues come in. And as I said, once you have no clear policy, because institutions are supposed to be implementing policy, now you don't even have a policy, you have a decision. Now that decision was not followed up by structures in how is this decision going to be made. That's why, as Honorable has mentioned, anybody creates a cooperative, but there should have been a register of cooperatives, because when you read through the report, they really come from before independence, where the cooperatives were created by government, individuals, and all sorts of fellows who put them in place. And it's even shocking that a cooperative could be started and owned by an individual, because the word cooperative itself means more than one individual, more than one family. So there must have been that register, and we had ministries. At one point, the Ministry of Agriculture is taking care of them. You have the Ministry of Cooperatives and Marketing itself. So I want to believe people who were ministers at that time had a register, who had a commission of cooperatives. The structure should have begin with that list. What was there? What did they own? Now, the moment you leave that fuzzy, then the frogs are going to come on the table. Somebody will do their own thing. So possibly the PS also took that advantage to say, let me set up a parallel system here. And of course, she's been embroiled in so many other internal internal systems
in that ministry and elsewhere.
In the ministry itself. It's also a question of the too much power that people concentrate around themselves, because ministries have worked in government. There are structures you're supposed to follow. There is a top technical in every ministry. There's a top management where the ministers come, but there are departments, there are directorates. Where you have a commissioner cooperatives, the commissioner should be having that history and inventory. I remember my journey through the Ministry of Finance. You would get a directive really from the president. But then you see this directive, as the minister is saying, review and make a brief for me. It is referring to so many other ministries. Some of them are defunct, some people are gone, but the records will be there.
Yeah.
So when you would call these individuals, they would say, wait, that matter came to cabinet, that matter came here. That. You also write to the president and ask for more time. Because now you have to engage some civil servants, another Ontario, I'm on holiday, this one traveled abroad. But everybody is really saying, if you want issues on that matter, it is so and so, not even that office. And a wealth of information will come from that individual. So I wish he had followed that procedure to say, where did this one begin? The report of Parliament would actually have been her report, to discover that some of the lists lined up as cooperatives never existed.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things to say.
But my question, how did it end up in her ministry and not in Ministry of Finance?
No, because in Ministry of Cooperatives, government, the first thing you raise is, it's my mandate. Mandate comes with power, mandate comes with money.
Yes.
It's my mandate. And every government document sometimes begins with quoting the law. So you want to grab it, especially when there are monies like this involved. I know my friend Ramadan has had troubles of compensation. He says, but I'm the person paying. So you as a ministry establish who I should pay, bring them to me, I will pay them. Just like civil servants. You tell me, who do you have? We know their bank account. We can send their money there. But somebody will say, no, you give me the money.
And I pay.
And I pay. I am the Minister of Lands. I want to pay. You've seen it here. They are saying Attorney General was paying. Where does an Attorney General, whatever office, end up and saying the following should be paid? Then Finance can send that list to the Treasury and say, these are the accounts of people. And that way, you begin also to avoid pay the lawyer, and then the lawyer will pay the other parties. Didn't the other parties have an account, or can they open an account? So you're really walking into mud and a swamp, and in a swamp, as we all know, there is no route. Where you find it shallow is where you take. Where it is deep, you disappear. Then somebody says, we are 7, how come we are 4? Anyway, people are gone. You want to avoid that in government.
Yeah. Honor, the Ssemujju says you're in the private sector. Do you see these shenanigans from afar?
Yeah, first of all, Oscar, it's always nice to return home after nearly 30 years. I was here as a regular.
Yes.
So I'm a blast from the past. I think growing up...
Just going back to the 30 years, there's a veteran who told me that we forgot to celebrate Capital Gang at 30 years. Where did you used to sit in those days?
No, we
in which
used to
city?
sit in Bowman House, which was not here.
Not in here.
So both me and Capital Gang have changed a lot.
Yes.
I was then like Ssemujju, more or less critical of the establishment. Down the road, I ate things.
Were you as noisy as
I was more noisy, but I mellowed. I've mellowed with time.
even Ssemujju has mellowed. When you have last week I had Agatha Nafka, I nearly died in the studio, and Ssemujju was the quiet one.
But to the story under discussion, I think for me the two words are really painful. That's cooperatives and compensation. I come from Teso. Actually, I live there. I just come to the Kampala once in a while. And the biggest word there has always been compensation. And up to today, people are crying for compensation for war losses. So when you hear billions being spoken about, individuals having billions, then you wonder, where they get this money, where they get the root, and the people who genuinely seem to have lost are not getting anything. Similarly, cooperatives was a big issue. We thrived on cotton, and cooperatives managed a straightforward affair. You simply grew your cotton, and you had a cooperative store within walking distance, and you go and sell your cotton. So I've not heard of Teso Cooperative Union being compensated. Maybe Ssemujju knows better. So in this story, are there some, Ssemujju will help me, are there some cooperatives which were genuine, which have been compensated, and they are isolated cases?
But you see, the trouble, even where genuine claims existed and were made, they also exaggerated. So you may have lost a property worth 1 billion, but those who are processing will tell you, please claim 7. So those stories are also in the report.
I think
but Honor's line is completely different. It's saying Teso has missed out, so they might have to.
No, the policy was put on hold because of this, but it was still ongoing.
See? So, but I think the bigger story is what we are all familiar with, the scams that some people have specialized in cooking up in government, the ghost stories that have existed for decades. And the saddest bit then is to hear that Parliament, where the people are supposed to run for salvation, is at the epicenter of the corruption. But I think someone has already pointed out, looking at it from a private sector view, this is complete failure of corporate governance. I think in government, none other than the president is crying every day about corruption. So if even the chief executive is at a loss, so we are in trouble. We are in trouble as a nation, and I think Ssemujju, if you still has room to salvage anything, the urgency couldn't be more. And it's shocking. How does someone get the audacity to create a cooperative and then you pocket the money? I mean, and you still go to sleep, you still have a decent meal with your family and feel all is well. I know we all love money, but this is more than loving money. This is outrageous. So looking at it from a private sector point of view, you just see that it's systemic, and we need to take a deep breath.
We have a warrior here, Agatha. Atware, you've been a warrior against. When this story came out, I was thinking maybe Parliament broke it. You'll have some nice words about Parliament finally. But a report comes out. I'm talking the impossible. So, Ona, don't worry too much. There are some warriors here. One of the leaders is
the tragedy though in this country that the warriors tend to fall along the way.
Is it just the tragedy in this country? I think warriors will get exhausted and tired at some point in any country. I don't know if Oscar is saying we should credit Parliament for bringing it out, but
why would it take this long for action to happen?
That's what I was going to
This
ask
is a
you.
report of 2023 October.
This report was the Speaker gave these instructions for the Trade Committee to investigate this in August 2023, and the report came out in October 2023. You should ask yourself why it was never debated on the floor of Parliament.
Oh, it wasn't debated?
No, it was not. That's why people are talking about it now. Honorable Ssemujju here said that many people are implicated in that report. And indeed, the things I heard before this report came out were that report was actually amended to absolve some people. I tried to look for the original copy and failed, but there are bigger fish that were...
Or the original, because the original would be the one saying, maybe the draft.
Yeah, I mean the initial report that had everyone that is involved, the one that was amended to remove some names. Well, because I have not yet gotten that evidence, I'm not going to mention the names, but there were bigger fish and bigger monies involved in that. And it was amended to remove them.
In my introduction, I was about to say this time there's no conspiracy theory from Agatha.
I've never given you any conspiracy theories.
You didn't say.
Oscar just, I don't know. But I like to say things that I am sure about. But that I'm sure that the report that we have ended up with is not what was discussed. But also, when it came up in October, the Speaker of Parliament on the floor said that she has decided to send the report to CID. And Honorable Ssemujju is here as a senior legislator. He might help us, enlighten us on where the Speaker got the powers to send a report, because now it's not yet a report of Parliament. If it was not tabled on the floor and discussed, the rules.
So it's a document in Parliament.
Don't anywhere say the rules that the reports of Parliament follow. It's tabled on the floor, it is debated, it is adopted, but it was instead, she sat and said she was sending it to the CID. And everyone knew that was illegal, that was ultra-vires, but no one challenged that. So that's why we are, I think this is 8 months later or 9, it's when we are hearing about that report. And we are hearing about it when the people that wanted to save themselves already saved themselves. And, the ones they want to take a fall for it, maybe are the ones that we are seeing now. When we talk about Geraldine Sally now, who is the latest, it's the things we say here every day, that the president is not interested in fighting corruption. There was another issue that Geraldine Usuro was involved in, about renovation of Farmer's House, which cost about 4 billion, I think, when renting other premises would have cost slightly higher than that. And that's when the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Finance interdicted her. And the President in October wrote again and instructed that they reinstate her. So you are not letting institutions work, and that cannot fight corruption. I think we will only be serious as a country if everyone that is involved in that report, the law firms that we have seen, the MPs, even those that edited themselves out of the report, and I don't know how that remains the best chairperson of a committee if under his watch something like that happens, because you can't say that Honorable Mwine Mpaka didn't know about that or doesn't know that. Maybe the report doesn't include all the people that it should include. But yeah, we are not serious about fighting corruption, and we let one person be the one to give the word. Whenever they feel fed up with you, Oscar, they can say. But if they are not, they will tell every agency and institution that is there to fight corruption, leave my people, they are corrupt by mistake, and that can't be a serious. We can't take ourselves as serious as a country in fighting the endemic of corruption, which has led to where we are. We want to discuss a planned march by Gen Z here, who think that they have failed to get any other avenues of these issues being addressed, who see that you have a plethora of institutions to fight corruption that we spend money on that don't do anything because you do not let them. And every day, instead, you think that you are going to resolve that by creating more and more. Thank you.
Mercy?
Thank you very much. And I think I'll digress just a little bit on that. I never thought I would live to really see evidence of political corruption and its semblance to bureaucratic corruption. And I think this scandal paints that picture very well.
Say some more on the two corruptions, but what do you mean? Because
the political is the misuse and abuse of power and privilege by people like the members of parliament and policy makers that influence processes that may seem legal at the surface, but at the tail end they are meeting personal interests. And bureaucracy is, abusing government systems and procedures, in the same way. And so here you are looking at the PS and the other administrative officers heavily involved in a process that is also equally led and manipulated by Parliament that has certain powers that are supposed to check these processes. And so if you study the report in depth and you look at the irregularities, you cannot place them on one side. You cannot place them entirely on Parliament. You will see the list of MPs that are involved in one way or the other in this process. And then you will also see administrators who are equally involved directly, but also their families, their associates playing a very heavy role. And then there's an introduction of the legal fraternity, the law firms. And actually, when my brother here was talking about TESO, when these scandals come, I always, with bias, look for West Nile in the scandal. This time I saw a Okoro coffee, a cooperative in Zombo, that was compensated, I think, 1.6 billion, and then the law firm took about 670 something million, in addition to a retainer fee of 5 million per month. This is how obscene this situation is. And so to understand how endemic corruption is to see how these two blend very perfectly in a scandal like the one we are seeing now. And this is what makes fighting graft very difficult. One time I was on a talk show and somebody said there's something called tenderpreneurship. Somebody comes up with an idea on their mind that can potentially be funded by government and that will benefit them. They will work backwards to ensure, one, that we have a policy. They do all the homework about how this could come to life, and they will successfully influence this policy and the processes around it, and then it comes to life. Like the cooperatives issue has come to life. It looked legal because it followed a policy process and all of this, even when we know that most of the cooperatives in the report were non-existent. But you can see that there are so many people behind this initiative by how much they've been able to take out of it. And so addressing corruption becomes even more difficult because there are layers and layers of actions, individuals, processes, and structures involved in enabling corruption. And we can be blinded because of the recent issues that are coming out to say it is probably more centered here. But when you read reports like this one, you realize that it has arms and legs elsewhere as well. And so addressing it would mean that the eyes have to be on a bigger ecosystem. And I can agree with Agatha that nobody is interested in doing that work. And that is the very unfortunate part about this matter.
Interesting. Benjamin Katana.
Thank you, Oscar. I have had the benefit of reading the report, but also listening to the background to this problem as laid down by the Honorable Ssemujju here. And this scandal is just another example of abuse of process and institutions. And they speak to a bigger problem of state capture, where you have narrow group interests taking control of institutions and policy processes. Because when you look at
you know, Tiyafuya said you must walk with a chapati.
And the chapati in your pocket.
I am now fearing because if he's a pioneer of capital gang and he walks in with his tea.
Yeah.
But
This is not Bowman House.
Yeah. And so you realize that this is just budgeted corruption. That even this money to be introduced, the idea to be introduced, probably the intention was to create a cash bonanza. And this has gained a lot of traction.
Today I'm learning very new terms. Is political corruption. What did you say the other one is, Marseille? Bureaucratic. Now you have said budgeted corruption.
Yes, people will come and explain, but that money is in the budget. But when the motivation was to create an avenue.
The other day we nearly killed
money.
Ssemujju here when he was saying that money is in the budget. When he was talking about your man.
And that is budget corruption.
Yeah, and recently I had the head of state complaining that Parliament is tinkering with the budget process. But the problem is bigger than that. That you have people who sit at the finance ministry working with heads of agencies, accounting officers in these agencies, create some avenues of stealing money like this one we are talking about of cooperatives. And I think the bigger problem is that this has been a journey. What we are seeing now are fruits of impunity. That we have had money lost no action taken. Even when there is semblance of action taken, it is lukewarm and dies along the way. You remember the Gavi scandal. Those who are older than me remember the Danzi scandal involving the NRA. Those who have been around know the compensation scandal involving the former employees of ISO. You are talking about law firms now, but there are also law firms previously that have received billions of money for people, and that money never reached the compensations in northern Uganda for victims of war. So the challenge is that this impunity has been here. People have stolen government money and nothing has been done on account of political expedience. And even when it comes to taking action, sometimes it is selective, giving an impression that all you need is to make sure that you're on the right side of politics or the right side of blood relations and friendship, so that this will accord you protection from what normally is called the long arm of justice. So because of the magnitude of the monies involved, has generated a lot of debate and interest, and even some analysts have pointed out that maybe it is also just being used as an avenue to further tame Parliament and have it where the executive wants it. But like Oscar likes to say, that could be a conspiracy theory. But there are so many cases of corruption that go on unpunished. And the state of Uganda has the means and the mechanism to detect corruption. We have all these agencies that have people who work for them. The challenge is that most times these agencies are part of the corruption. That you have people who are running the accounts of state institutions, working in cahoots with people that are doing audit, working in cahoots with people at Inspectorate of Government, working with people that are running intelligence agencies. Because the president, the chief executive, is a consumer of intelligence. He knows who is stealing what, he knows who is investing in what, and therefore government should know where that money has come from. When you're opening a small account and depositing 5 million, they will ask you for a source of income. But we have all these people that are stealing government money, putting up hotels, putting up cathedrals for homes, and nobody is asking them where they are getting money from. All we have had is a person that should be taking action against these people, praising some of them for being hardworking. And so my colleague here mentioned the lack of political will. At this stage, even if there is will from Mr. Museveni, who is running the country, I think the NRM government and the country is dealing with what political scientists call political decay. That the system is incapable of reform and adapting to change. It needs to be overhauled. Because where will it stop? Because if you say that you're going to deal with corruption cases, save for one who has presidential immunity under the Constitution, you'll find that everyone else running government and their family members are involved. We have had cases, and on this show, the Capital Gang, have on many occasions had people make reference to a number of scandals that have happened previously. The junk helicopters, names were mentioned and no action is taken, and the person says, this one apologized. So the question is, why should the law only act if it is this individual involved, and the law is not applied when it's the other individual involved? Now, that leads to public losing confidence in the fight against corruption. And as such, even when genuine actions are taken, they are not looked at as genuine actions because of the track record of the people that are running the affairs of the state.
So, what way forward do you see? Let me start. I don't know, Mercy, are you Gen Z or Millennium? Or?
I am Millennium, but calling me a Gen Z may be it's flat. It's a compliment. That means
why?
I am the Kalo I eat every day is doing a great job. Giving me, yeah. I think that first of all, there, as bad as this looks, the fact that we have consumed this report before it's tabled in Parliament, and it
was tabled,
but not discussed in Parliament. Yeah. The way we would have expected it to be, given how scandalous it looks, means that we have an opportunity as citizens to continue to lead the fight. Because where we are in Uganda, in a context where laws are abused, misused, or in many cases disregarded to cater for political and personal interests, we are left to the court of public opinion, but also pressure from the public that we can choose to ignore now, but it will force those in positions of power to take a side and in the least make a decision. And there's an opportunity for the state to really demonstrate in action their commitment that they keep talking about in terms of its fight against corruption. Not once, not twice. I do not know how many times this year the head of state has made public statements about his commitment to fight corruption. And so in a scandal like this one, where names have been mentioned, how is the law going to be applied equally to those that have been cited? Obviously, in our Ugandan context, we have seen that government agencies are many times not the best placed to prosecute corruption. And I say this as a follow-up to what I mentioned earlier about political corruption, because it is led by the political elite, and many times it also has arms and legs to the policymakers themselves. And so the custodians of law and legal processes in our state find themselves compromised. And so their ability to make decisions on issues are very much rooted in our politics of patronage and allyship. You know, who butters my bread? And if I make a decision that is likely to rattle the feathers of the one that butters my bread, what is the implication for me? And so you find many times, even while we have an opportunity to make decisions and take drastic measures that demonstrate actual commitment, we fail to do so. And so it defeats the purpose. It defeats the purpose for which we have these laws in place. And for me, in the recent times, I celebrate the urgency with which citizens are leading the fight against corruption. They've gotten to a place where they are fearless. They've gotten to a place where they're saying, you know what, enough is enough. And I keep saying that you undermine the power of young people in this age and era at your own risk. This is the elite class that we educated several years ago. And the fruits of that education is beginning to manifest. They are not living in the era in which we lived, whereas information existed, access was not as permissible as it is today. We didn't have so many opportunities to learn across borders about how to organize, but they do. And they have every tool in their hands to wash you out dry. They may not get actions outside of you as quickly as they should, but the impact of their voice, their agency, their involvement in a fight will have long-lasting effects on those implicated in these scandals, whether within or without. And so I believe that that is going to be one of the opportunities. And if the state really cares about its legitimacy, if it cares about its reputation, it should decide to forego some of its political interests and take action, especially where information is readily available. Yeah.
Agatha, do you feel vindicated with the exhibitions and AGOA, because you had exhibited these things as one of the principles there, and now Parliament itself is pointing out parliamentarians that we could say have taken money?
Okay, you have said this again. I don't know if Parliament is the one that has pointed out in their report.
Well, in their report, they listed parliamentarians.
That's why they refused to debate it, because it was about parliamentarians. But yeah, vindication really, and we didn't need it because I tell people every day that we do this when we are convinced that there is information. We we verify it, we double check it. So we always know that that these are things that that we should do, that no one can dispute. They fail to dispute them during the exhibition or the information we put out there, and resorted to just personal attacks. So it's, I think every day more Ugandans get to realize that the type of leaders we have, and the phrase "we are on our own" that Ugandans started saying some time back gets more and more real each day. It must be the reason these young people that I saw their response to police today, and they were telling police, "We were actually not asking for your permission to go and protest, because the law allows us to go and march. We are exercising our right. The courts have twice said that we can do that. That for you, your job, we are telling you so that you come and ensure that there's peace." Now, I see that determination from young people, from people that everyone had been saying the youth of this country are not participating in their affairs enough. Others have been saying Uganda is not Kenya. For us, they can.
Even a Kenyan said what?
Even Kenya says Kenya is not Uganda.
That for us, they can do this and loot the country and steal from us. And that's what we really have done. That when so many billions, 64 billion and whatever is stolen, you are trying to tell people that all the problems you have could have been solved by half if that money had been put where it is supposed to be put. You're telling them that the health center in next to you that has no doctor, that has no medicine, could have medicine. Or the women that go to hospital and find a list that, we don't have a surgical plate, we don't have this and that, it could be there. And Ugandans are getting aware of that. It's gratifying when you're a journalist, because that's what you are supposed to do. Inform people, give them information, empower them to take decisions that are informed. And so every day that gets reinforced, that now we are seeing young Ugandans saying enough is enough. No one is going to come to our rescue. Not the president of this country, not the IGG whose mandate is to fight graft, not the anti-corruption courts, which, tomorrow they are told to acquit and or the DPP to withdraw charges. So then that for me is what is very gratifying. That each day you realize that more people have been informed, more people have been sensitized, more people are thinking of what can we do, what steps can be taken. If these other avenues have not worked, we need to think of other ways. Yes.
Dr. Mumza, what's the way forward? Is it going to be one of those cases, a lot of hoo-ha, and then it dies down? You've seen a lot of these, I guess.
I think even if it dies out, you don't want to lose what doctors will cherish from a post-mortem report. It may be a failure report, that person is dead, but how do you extend this to what Honor was emphasizing, to curb the gross systemic lack of governance in systems? So you want to draw out of this to say, while we follow up with this, there are many other lessons we can roll out elsewhere. Already we have said this is a report of October 2023. So how do we make sure such reports again don't sit undiscussed, untabled, and acted upon? But also now when you look through, they might have mentioned the parliament, and you might say the members of parliament, and now they are beginning also to go to the technocrats. The report is so full of other technocrats who are involved in it. But you also don't want to go to a technocrat and then fail to change the system within the mainstream functionality of government, to curb others, and maybe even to bring out others that are out there. Honor here has mentioned the Teso people, the war claims on cattle. Really, in
Teso Cooperative Society, the claim was 9 billion. It was paid, but they received 1 billion.
Now those are things you want to cure. Why should the compensation?
What the claim was?
The claim was 9 billion, which was paid. but the
received 1
society
billion.
received 1 billion.
Now, maybe
The 8 billion is hanging there.
So it's somewhere.
Those are things you want to look at, that even if we are resurrecting a dead cooperative, can we first resurrect it fully so that it has a management, a structure? And I saw that as one of the recommendations of saying strategy. When you get the money, what are you going to do with it? That demands you first have it registered. It has an account. It has either a board or whoever. Put those things in place. Let's not miss out this, because once you haven't done them and you are ready to release the money, a lawyer will receive it on their behalf. Then the lawyer will decide, what should I pay myself? And then he will realize, guys, it's actually me who created
And as
you.
Mercy said, they're already on
facilitated the process.
and they're already on a retainer.
You want to have all these sorted out from this report. So for me, even if I wasn't looking at what court and DPP and the others are doing, there are so many other government agencies that should trigger into action to begin learning and drawing from this report, to put things right. Who should constitute a committee? How do you determine the losses? Because clearly the report shows some of the losses were because of the economic turmoil. Now, are these supposed to be compensated? Because even us, our parents and fathers and businesses, all suffered due to this economic turmoil. How do you deal with these coffee farmers whose yields fell from 466 metric tons to 32? Because of the economic turmoil, not that because anybody stole their wealth. Should I compensate that as well? But we draw lessons. Which lessons should also be speaking to, are we having similar economic situations that are ruining these very same entities? Cooperatives were not actually closed or collapsed. The new economic environment could not just allow them to survive because of their nature of operation. And that was part of the liberalization agenda. Let the best fight and win. Remove the weak ones, let them get out of the system. And the cooperatives really went out. Cooperative Bank was not closed. The closure is because it had collapsed. But in the banking system, you don't allow something to collapse on its own. You manage its fall. But that's what people will call closure. But literally, it has failed to live. It is like a patient who really doctors will decide, can we send this one to sleep? That's what the process the central bank did. But it had failed to manage that environment. And up to today, here people wanting a cooperative bank, saying government help us to re-establish it. No, it's not government which establishes banks or helps them to come in. The criteria is clear. Settle yourselves up and come back. So the lessons, even for the cooperative union, I see they haven't learned their lessons. They still think they must subsist on charity from government, which is not going to be there. Because this government, even if it was charitable and willing, the capacity to really handhold such a system is not going to be there.
Let me have Ssemujju have last word on this one. Before Ssemujju, you want to squeeze in a comment?
He has now learned that,
from my experience,
he has learned that Teso got 1 billion.
So, I'm supposed to be happy.
The corporate that was not in cattle.
Look, I wanted to look at the bigger picture. My experience both in government and now in the private sector is that the propensity to take more is inherent in human beings. The crisis is that in government, unlike in the private sector, you don't have the system to hold off people's hands from the good thing. And I don't see corruption being defeated until when we have, I don't know how we can grow that kind of system whereby there is no single individual who has the liberty to get money as they wish. I know we have systems that ideally should be the laws and all that should be making that should make that happen. But then there is a lot of collusion. You know? Those who are supposed to check the other are not doing it because they have common interests. And sometimes I dream of maybe the government system as we have it is not working in terms of controlling money. Can we do something to externalize it to the private sector, which has also been demonized, but not the usual private sector, which is created by individuals, the way we are seeing cooperatives being created? Can we have legitimate companies that have shareholders who care about reputation, the companies that are listed, outsource some of these financial control. Because the current system is just, I think nobody is able to control it. The president may wish certain things to happen, but there are people who have the ability to beat any system you put in there. Because if you have collusion with people in justice, people in finance, I don't know about Bank of Uganda, these are the axes that are supposed to control how government money is used. But clearly are seeing lawyers coming into the picture, both public and private, and it's just out of control. So I sort of say we can lament, we can change players, and I don't even think change of government is going to solve this problem. Maybe it's now become a disease.
Well. Master says, let's try it first. So, Honorable Ssemujju, is there an opportunity for this paper to come back to Parliament?
To do what?
No.
It is now being implemented elsewhere. I think the first of all, I'm not sure that the parliamentary investigation were exhaustive. I'm not sure. They are just an eye-opener. Because if you're talking about, in the report of the Auditor General reports about 139 billion. People who are being charged, I don't think they have been charged for anything above 20 billion. So you need to get the rest of the people who put their hands on maybe about 120 billion. And as I said earlier, it was not possible for the MPs who are chosen and maybe Gerardina, without the involvement maybe of the government lawyers and the Minister of Finance. Some of the money that was being given out actually came to Parliament as supplementary budget. We have argued over supplementary budgeting. The law says these are things that are supposed to be of an emergency nature, unforeseeable, and so on and so forth. But they bring a supplementary budget, including compensation, whose verification should ordinarily take long. So really, for an item to appear in a supplementary budget, it means the MPs themselves are not the originator of the supplementary budget. They may ask that please include it. But those who are, so finance, the office of the government lawyer, the Attorney General, Solicitor General, and others. But for me, I think the sustained public pressure, because if you want to learn from Kenya, you start from stealing, and then you go to maybe what Katana called stealing through the formal budgeting.
Budget corruption.
Budget corruption. Because in Kenya, if you are at a stage where people are rolling back their own benefits, that this budget for the first and second and fifth day should go. This and this should go. So when you're at that stage of rolling back benefits, I think you may have succeeded. I'm not sure that the success is on both fronts. Because you want to stop the stealing and looting, and then you go and deal with privileges that people give themselves through the formal processes. So for me, what has been lacking in Uganda, I remember we had that was called University of New York, but one of those universities in America, they were at Parliament. I was still a journalist with Monitor. And in their report, they said what was shocking about Uganda is that they will report that money meant for a road from this place to this, and people are not bothered.
Okay.
The beneficiaries are not bothered. Instead, one politician will make a statement as if he's the one who is bothered. So once you get the people to be bothered and either take action or threaten action, you may not succeed entirely, but there will certainly be a change.
Dr. Mumza said even post-mortem is useful. So let's stop for a break, and after the break, we'll start with Benjamin Katana.
If the dead is not yours.
On NUP. Welcome back from the break. This is the Capital Gang. Many topics for discussion. We've dispatched the first one. That's very topical. I hope it will not die out. So, Benjamin Katana, NUP was granted permission. Was the permission actually granted to restart the tours?
Well, I think that is the starting point is that ideally police should have no business granting or denying permission to political parties or citizens to conduct legitimate and constitutionally guaranteed activities. But the history in this country under the NRM has been that political activities are largely censored. That organizing a rally or a meeting attracts unnecessary attention from the security agencies that have, in one way or the other, become part of the political establishment that NRM is. But to answer your question directly, yes, we have had run-ins with the police and other security agencies regarding conduct of political rallies and activities, like other opposition organizations and people that do not necessarily belong to the NRM in this country. So sometime last year, we were conducting a mobilization tour across the country. And we received a directive from the then Deputy Inspector General of Police, General Kathigazi, stopping us from conducting our activities. And then there was back and forth. Then some time early this year we resumed. Then again we received communication from police that you cannot continue conducting your activities. And so we have had a number of meetings, 2 so far. And yes, we resumed our activities. The whole of last week we were in Western Uganda. And we hope that we will not be receiving any communication from police anytime soon, stopping us from conducting activities that are legitimate and constitutional. But even when we were able to move out there, we were frustrated in many ways. In Hon Ssemujju, the police could not even allow us to access the radio station that had been paid for. And you have... so they don't even allow you to reach... They want you to conduct business from a place that is hard to access by the population. In terms of distance from the trading centers.
But wouldn't that make sense? To be away, say, from business areas and all, so that you have better concentration, perhaps, and less disruption.
It should be reasonable, because if you're going to be ordered to hold your activity 40 kilometers away from the urban centers, it means that there's a very big population that you're not going to get an opportunity to address. And not everyone...
40 kilometers is far.
Not everyone can afford the transport to move from that place to another. But in all this is the deliberate effort by the police and other security agencies who have been consumed and drafted into the partisan politics as active participants on the side of NRM to frustrate the opposition from organizing activities that are legitimate and protected under the law. And it also happens that a number of radio stations, for example, that ordinarily, even because they have already accepted payment and bookings for airtime, then they receive calls from the RDC, from the DPC, ordering them not to host us on talk shows. So it goes a long way to show the determination of the NRM establishment to keep the opposition away from the population, so that you do not have an opportunity to present your agenda, that you do not have an opportunity to mobilize the population and carry out civic activities that are protected under the law, because the intention is to make sure that you don't grow.
Yeah. And Honor, it is unsurprising that call is not available to them.
Indeed. But first of all, I would like to, from my political retirement perspective, I look at the happenings with a lot of bemusement, a lot of deja vu. The NUP, better known to most people as People Power, can be commended or should be commended for the resilience it has showed, especially after its somehow spectacular performance in the Central Region in the last election, especially at parliamentary level. But I think it's running its course, unfortunately, like many other opposition groups, because the path is working, was trodden by Ssemujju and others under the FDC. And NUP came with the mantra of removing a dictator. But of course, the NRM's stated public position is to have no opposition. And as Mr. Katana says, the NRM is also the state. It has never stopped being so since 1986. So I don't see much more they can do that FDC did not do. So what the police is doing with the NUP, in my view, is basically a classic cat and mouse game. The NUP is trapped as a typical mouse, but it's allowed once in a while to appear like it's going to run away, and then it's clawed back in time. So I really, they have my sympathies, but that is the game. That's the game. So I don't know how far by the next election, how far they will have gone. I expect that there will be a lot of reversals in the party's fortunes in the Central Region, because I believe the NRM was caught off guard. They thought maybe NUP was no more than DP in Uganda, but then it became a different animal. But during the next round, it will find the NRM prepared for it, and its fortunes are going to likely to decline. So that's the game they have chosen to play. I hope they are.
I was looking at their numbers in Western Uganda, and I thought actually they may have numbers in Western Uganda.
Those numbers were there even during the last rallies. Of course, the NUP is an exciting team for young people. Their dressing is they're associated with the music. So they're a very exciting team to watch and to follow.
To join with.
So you don't follow the young people in Uganda for. But the odds are really stacked against them, and I wish you well.
It's
a tough game.
When you hear Honor actually saying there's no hope for NUP and no hope for young people, you could even say no hope for Agatha's exhibitions.
We are under a military rule. Family military rule. I was drawing attention to some of my friends to a photograph in the New Vision this week, where ministers, 3 of them, had given a company to Muhoozi Kainerugaba to go and receive vaccines. Ordinarily, Muhoozi should be saluting. These are the supervisors. But the supervisors, Ruamirama, the Minister for Fisheries, and someone else, were the ones accompanying Muhoozi to go and receive. I say now, were they accompanying a CDF? Because the CDF in the Ugandan hierarchy is a rank below ministers. Maybe the rank of Museveni's son is above ministers. I said maybe I will seek clarification in the parliament whether they went to accompany the son of the president or they are accompanying an officer under their supervision. So all the things that we are going to do, the level of violence is going to be determined by the threat. In my constituency, there are places where I have gone. When people are few, the attention will be less. They will allow you, they can even bring chairs for you. But where there are people and they know there will be an impact, they are going to be brutal. During COVID, there are areas where I went and actually had campaigns in Chira. But there are areas where they said you will not go. And then you ask them, what's the difference? So what as Honor said, the what NUP is going through, we've gone through it. We will jointly go through it at every stage. I don't think Mr. Museveni wants competition. He wants it control. The only difference between us and Rwanda is that in Rwanda there is no competition at all. But Museveni here will allow, for many reasons, if you want to continue borrowing money, if you want, so you can. They can give you, but the conditions are different. The conditions are different because even Somalia has money, but receive it under different conditions. So they will allow you to go and have a rally once in a while if they think it will be good PR for them. If it is not, or if they judge that the threat is one that they cannot tolerate, they will create reasons. I asked policemen when they came to arrest me in Kasokoso. They were in their hundreds, and they said, "You did not inform us." I said, "Then how comes you are here?" Because you have said I did not inform you, but you are here. All the vehicles, every tear gas, everything is here, but you are saying you are not informed. So then how did you know? So, and you ask people, the order is not theirs. Some of them are intelligent. They really look embarrassed. But that's all you have to go through. And I take the point from Hon seriously that NRM, Mr. Museveni has said he will have no opposition. He can create his, maybe the way it is done in China and Rwanda. He can create his own opposition. If you create yourself, he will keep beating at you. Yeah.
You know, our Joseph Otieno has invited you to UPC. I don't know when you are going to honor his invitation. One of these days he'll be back here and give you a
Otieno is my friend, but he belongs actually to another UPC. There are 2 or 3. He's not in the mainstream UPC of Akena. He has his.
NUP won't go to Kolo. You've seen that notice. Were you surprised?
No, you asked us here last weekend, and we all said no.
You all laughed.
Or who was trying to, I don't know what he was trying to do, because sometimes these days he says the truth about government and you get shocked. I saw his response to Nakalema on Twitter yesterday, saying that what Nakalema was saying was hogwash. I also saw his response to the letter of police to those Gen Zs. And I said, okay, there's a transformation happening. But on the issue of Kololo, he's the only one who said that they have allowed FDC before.
But the day they allowed us to go to Kololo, when the leaders passed, they closed the roads. In fact, we arrived at Kolo, myself, Dr. Besji and Lukwago. We about 100 people. They sealed off the roads at Africana, the side of Game and everywhere.
They had to protect you.
So we are the only ones there talking to ourselves.
Uganda is not a real place, like Master has said. So those things, when they happen, yesterday after the letter from police, it came after, in Kenya, the Kenya Law Society had gone to court over an issue like that court had nullified. And you ask yourself here, when they say Uganda is not Kenya, they are very right. When you see a letter from police like that, when it clearly knows it has no mandate to stop people and to tell them what avenues or to take or something like that, and you see us keep quiet, and then after that we saw another letter from the Interreligious Council saying these children shouldn't tag them. They don't want to be partisan. I don't know when. That's corruption. Yeah. There's a letter circulating. The Interreligious Council.
They are protesting just being tagged
because Gen Zs were tagging them in their posts about the marched parliament, and they said, "Do not tag us. We don't want to be partisan. We don't want to participate in partisan politics." But these children are talking about corruption. Since when is corruption? And you see stuff like that. There is a video that Spire made 3 days ago, still talking about police and these people in authority. And he made so many short videos in there and said, you are sleeping in these unipods. You are enforcing illegal orders for people sleeping in malls, mall-like houses. So you look at the police we have. There was also someone who asked a question when these young people went to meet police and said, was the meeting in Dinka? And what he meant was, they met 4 police officers that were all Banyankole. And the other contrast was that the Gen Zs where there was no Westerner in them. I noticed that contrast. But the what I'm saying is that the authorities...
No, there's Mr. Makana Kennedy Ndiamahaki.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, Makana, I hadn't seen the Ndiamahaki name. I thought it was just Makana. I've never heard it as a Nyankole name. But yeah, so that's it. That some things are so glaring, people notice them, and they just put there. When he said Dinka, we first didn't get it until I saw the names of the police officers. But the thing is that we have people that are aiding, and we've been trying to write about abuse of power. And talking about enablers. So there are those that abuse it, like President Museveni, like all his people, the Speaker of Parliament. But then there are these people in these positions that enable that. The state, the prosecutors that prosecute people for criticizing leaders, the judges and magistrates. There's one in Brora's case who has been adjourning it for one film series on after the other. This yesterday he didn't even show up, and I think we should profile them, we should write to them, we should do those kinds of videos like the one that Spire did, and say that it's first of all what you're doing is illegal, but also you are really not benefiting from that. Your children will not benefit from that. This country will not benefit from that. When we are saying the things we say and we are called fighters or people who are attacking others, we are being personal and attack. This becomes personal. I don't know why people don't get it. It becomes personal when you know that people are dying in hospitals because they cannot. Why wouldn't it be personal? When you know that tomorrow our children will not have any schools to go to, when you see how schools are run in this country and a kindergarten child pays 2 million, with no one regulating it, with ministers Minister of Education running schools, so they have no need, they don't feel any need to regulate because school fees, because it will affect them. We also, what happened during COVID, when people would die in hospitals and the hospitals retain bodies because of those very exorbitant, outrageous charges that were there. If we had those basic services provided by our government, it wouldn't be like that. So you see people who do not see that and take you who is trying to say this is wrong as the one who is being antagonistic and personal and whatever. And I think we need to get more and more people to stand up against this abuse, these people that are abusing power. They have no power whatsoever to stop anyone from using these resources like Kololo. It's public. When you talk about these rallies, the nationwide tours that they have allowed again, I don't know if we all remember the words of Felix Kulaije during those rallies. Benjamin, remind me what he said about the bombs, that there was some terrorist whatever comment he made, and he said, if they die from this, we will not be held accountable. But they had been ensuring that MK Muhoozi's birthday parties and rallies were happening
safely. Mercy, will NUP return to Arua? There's some not so good memories there.
Yeah, I think since those memories, they have been returning to Arua, and for some reason, I do not know. Well, I know. I'll not pretend I don't know. Actually, in West Nile, when opposition comes, police do not they do not stop. They do not dare do anything. They just allow things to happen and they move because
and it passes quickly.
The power of the people can defeat the power of the gun in certain contexts. So they don't try that very much in West Nile. But I'm not surprised that they have allowed NUP to go over its planned activities. I want to believe that it's just part of the, for lack of a better word, participatory flavor. Just trying to flavor this electoral process, having some bit of flavor because we have allowed opposition to do its thing. But as we know, and as history has documented very well, that this can quite easily change. So we wait to see how long that will be. Sometimes it has been permitted, but then it is quickly withdrawn. And what is really interesting about this is that it is not even legal to seek police permission to do something that is entrenched in the law, but we have normalized that so much that citizens actually believe that it is legal to do so. And
I don't need permission to go and visit Ssemujju's home from police.
No, you don't. No, you don't. And for me, normalizing things like this makes us lose sight. But also it makes me always question our seriousness about democracy. I think what we see as democracy in our context is just pseudo-democracy because we don't want all of it. We want parts of it that favor particular groups of people. So we pull that card as and when it best satisfies us as a nation, but we don't go all the way. That is why our systems of checks and balances are not functional. So if you see in context like Kenya, when police releases a statement about actions they are planning to take and somebody files in a court of law, court will give priority to hearing that matter, and in many cases they will take an independent stand, which is always backed by the provisions of the law. But would you like to say something?
You wanted to make a comment?
Just a comment if
yes.
it's done. But
you can.
That dictatorships are like amoeba. They keep changing shape. Sometimes they can make a concession, but the concession is only made when, and like Honorable Ssemujju mentioned, when the action they are conceding to at that particular moment is not threatening survival. Because for them the preoccupation is survival and power retention. So if at that moment the concession helps them to push that agenda, they will make the concession. If it doesn't, they will not make the concession.
Yeah. And in a real democracy, you will find that the other arms of government will check excesses using provisions of the law. But the fact that we can witness sheer abuse of the law and there is no arm of government that takes an independent decision to ensure that the state is, respecting its commitments that are enshrined in its law, goes to show you how weak what we consider as democracy is in our context. But also, more importantly, is that across Africa, including Uganda, I believe that elections are projects. We receive monies for these processes, and so we have to account. And that accountability has to be seen to be inclusive. And part of that accountability is to demonstrate that we have allowed participation, that we have put in place structures and mechanisms that allow for people to partake of this process. And so sometimes certain actions are informed by that because they are projectized. But at the bottom of it, is it really democracy that we're looking at, or is it a pseudo-democracy? And I think we have an opportunity, and I'll say this again, our government has an opportunity to cleanse itself and to make this process better than the ones we've witnessed before. Let it be participatory. Demonstrate your strength in winning the belief of citizens in your system by allowing them to freely participate in the process without the fear of losing their lives if they chose a political affiliation that is not widely popular. And also we need to ensure that the recommendations that have been made over the years out of suits that have gone to court against elections are actually implemented right from the onset, because again, and as I conclude, this is the bed and the foundation we're laying for some of the issues that will come after this cycle of elections. We were talking about corruption earlier, but corruption actually begins from electoral fraud and the processes therein. The things that, the lengths and heights that people go to obtain access to be able to freely express themselves and build their political momentum before a subsequent election. And so once we start the process the way we have always known, then the children of this process will be manifested in the next 5 years as the scandals we're seeing today, because many politicians get into some of these scandals to pay back for some of the fraudulent actions that happen pre-election. And so let government's decisions be consistent across the spectrum with regards to what they call democracy and which is enshrined in the law.
Thank you, Mercy. Dr. Mumuza, Agatha talks about us teachers and schools. You are in a public school, me, I'm in a private school, but you are the one with the Gen Z people. So if we transition to that topic, you concluding on the NUP tours, and then on to, I'm seeing a letter here by police writing to 4 people, telling them that the walk will not be allowed, the petition to Parliament. But do you see NUP coming to Bunyoro?
Well, it's part of Uganda, so and there are voters there, so I'm very sure they are interested in that part as well, even for many other reasons. But also learning from NUP, they were stopped and then later on they were allowed. So the Gen Zs also need to know that this letter of the police stopping them, they should continue engaging the police. Eventually, whatever reason the police has may change, because police has given its reasons. They may be factual or not, that's not our detail. But eventually the conversations between the Gen Zs and the police should continue.
Well,
they will eventually be let to go. But the beauty
I have Carl here saying Oscar Kolo is under renovation. The road has been dug up. And it says maybe Ssemujju needs a room at State House since he can't talk about anything without involving Museveni and his family.
That he will respond to. But I think for me the main thing is, and this week we had a very good discussion at Makerere University Business School with the scholars and the Professor Nwagaba and others on what actually is the problem. You don't want to discuss symptoms. That's why you go to a doctor, you have a high temperature, they will get your sample and send to the lab. They want to rule out and rule in certain things. So when you look at all of this, what exactly is the problem? And underneath is going to be an economic problem. You already have statistics that came out of the Bureau that 73% of Ugandans are literally below the age of 30. But of those, 50.5 are below age 17. These are literally dependents. They are not working, but they need education, they need health, they need accommodation, they need food. So the socio-economic pressure on these youth, and remember some of the Gen Zs you're talking about are the 18 to 30, who are looking after these younger ones, because their parents were not lucky enough to make money and take care of the younger ones. So some of these people are looking after their siblings. So at the end of the day, you get into an economic problem. And how do you solve this? And this is not going to be solved by police. It's not going to be solved by saying, guys, sit down. A hungry person will still rise up, because they are hungry. Until you feed them or you give them an opportunity to eat, you're still going to have that problem. Now you go back and look at the salary structure in Uganda, really. This week I was shocked to find that one of the people close to me that I know earns 130,000 a month. Now even if you have to go to Kasokoso to look for rent of less than 130, and that is your entire salary. You haven't eaten, you also have a child to take to school. With the current condition of government, health facilities, you must look for health. You begin to see where it is coming from. The police have just received an increment of 17%. I'm talking about the bottom of the pyramid. From literally 375 to 140. What can that do? This police officer also has a family, has relatives, has aspirations. So he may not, by nature of their work, join the Gen Zs, but in his heart of hearts, they all share the same common problem. So like we were discussing with IGAD one time, I learned one great thing on disasters and some of these hardships in the region. Don't begin to ask who is lighting the matchstick to burn the grass. First of all, ask two questions. Who brought the dry grass here?
Or how did the grass dry?
How did the grass dry? Because until you go back and rejuvenate the grass, all these animals are going to migrate. And if they have to walk through your compound, you certainly are not going to remain with your crops, with your house, even yourself. You know the great migration of the wild beasts in Kenya. So we need to get back to the fundamentals and say, the Gen Zs, whether we discuss democracy, whether we discuss they should come and demonstrate, and that's not going to solve the underlying socio-economic problem. That Uganda has a problem like where we began with the cooperatives. They died because of economic hardships. These young people are not going to allow to join the cooperatives, and then they are ghosts to begin being resurrected to be compensated in 2040. They have to make sure they live to see the day, as they are saying, survival is for all of us. So can we have serious economic conversations on the nature of policies, the nature of budgeting, the nature of planning, the nature of corruption? I think I see the three C's in our earlier discussion: the cooperatives, compensation, and corruption. They are all there. And grade C in rating of for us teachers is not a good grade. How do we rate off the C's and make sure people are graded to B and then eventually to A, and we can talk to A plus economy? Until that is done, these fellows are 33.5 million below the age of 30. You cannot put them in prison. You cannot keep them away. They need to eat. They're asking for genuine, basic things. Can I sleep decently, work, go to school, or send my siblings to school? That, for me, is the real fundamental problem of this country and this economy.
Honorable Ssemujju, I'm reading a tweet on X, formerly Twitter, by Kaushenga, and you know, it says, if you don't engage the national youth, you will confront radical anarchists, and says you refuse dialogue with opposition, you go to NUP. So
and by the way,
is it such a bad thing?
They are youth in NRM. They are youth who are active, you would say active, against government, but I don't want to say anti-government. The bulk of the youth are sitting out there, like the Americans appeal to undecided voters. This is where the bulk is. Forget the 4 or the 28 or 2,000. There are these 30 million Ugandans out there. What do we do with them?
You undermine experienced legislators, you got Zake. This is you ask for sleeping MPs who wake up to vote. Now we have a house of thieves. So, Honorable Ssemujju, this march, police writes and says the march is not allowed to take petition to the speaker.
I mean, for me, I am used to this with the police. They will tell you did not notify us. When you notify them, sometimes they will say they did not see the letter. If they see it, then they will give reason like they have given. Because the decision.
But even if you don't notify, you made me laugh. They turn up anyway.
In Kasoko, so they came at 5 in the morning. The meeting was supposed to start at 10. And then I arrive at 9. They tell me they are not aware because I did not inform them. But this is not their decision. We go back to NOB. I keep referring to an incident. I don't remember which year it was. They disconnected water and electricity in police barracks. The motivation was that they wanted non-policemen to go away. Especially after the vote. I don't remember which voting it was. So when they disconnected water and electricity, the wives mainly staged the demonstration. Their husbands fired tear gas at them around Rugogo. Policemen firing tear gas at their...
What do you call that? Domestic violence.
Firing tear gas at their wives who are protesting because they had been disconnected. So sometimes when I am addressing political meetings, I extend sympathy to policemen who accepted to work under these conditions, that you will be made to fire tear gas at your own family. Because you see, you get arrested. One time I was taken at Ginger Road. I was with Wafula. And then they say, you see, you guys, they deployed us for the last 3 days. They were not even bringing lunch. So you were at a police station detained, and you were the one buying lunch for policemen. There is a guy who had been arrested, this young woman who defrauded the Mzungu. The husband had been at a Bad Black. The boyfriend had been there. He came with lots of blankets. So the other inmates I found, they told me most of the blankets were taken by policemen because they told me at least a day there. So I was telling policemen in Kasokoso and soldiers, we are in this together. So we are all slaves. So if they can make you Oscar fire tear gas at your own family, and then in the evening, either you carry a gun or you take the gun to the armory and return home, I don't know how you're going to be received. So the people who are coming to Parliament, I think as they said, I'm told, I haven't seen their response, their responsibility in the law is to inform police. Yeah. That's where it stops. In the old Police Act, before the Public Order Management came, there was a requirement for them to issue permission, and it was taken to court, and court saying, no, you have no business issuing permission. Your role actually is to facilitate. And in the case, because for a demonstration, they're going to ask you for a rally, for a venue, a receipt. But walking to Parliament, you don't need the receipt. So nobody should give you a receipt that you are going to Parliament. So really, I want to encourage the young people to continue, because even us, you want to go and do a rally, they tell you either the venue is not appropriate, because they're implementing someone else's decision. If he says you go, they will say you go now. They will even escort you. If he says don't go, you will not go. As they were abandoning me in that pickup in Kasoko, so I had, especially UPDF, they were choosing me. You want to bring Kenya here, because for them they were standing there. They were not participating, but they were talking. You want to bring, so you can say they have charged them that people want to bring Kenya here. So that's what they must fight. So I think in every meeting now, they see a Kenya in it, because the conditions are the same. Population that is poor, population that is...
Kenya never saw Sudan coming to their way.
until it did. So I know they will face the same things that we face.
Honor?
Look, I think the bigger question is, can Kenya happen in Uganda? And I like to say it can't, because Ugandans in general have suffered a lot of abuse by government since independence. And along the way, many of them are, in my view, exhibiting the equivalent of withdrawal symptoms. So the challenge for the young people who may want to ignite something in Kampala is their countrywide courage or appetite to do the same, which I've seen in Kenya. And I don't think there is, because precisely over the years, Ugandans have learned not to expect from government. Even these acts of corruption which the elite are getting away with, and some of the Wananchi may cheer them, is because of there is no belief strongly that these are our resources, because government has never, especially since the 70s, really given people that sense that it's there to give them and to satisfy their needs. So the best you can hope for from government is to be left alone. If you can go to sleep and there is no chaos, either due to some, for us in terms of cattle rustling in many parts of the country, some rebellion, and people have resigned to that level of satisfaction, in quotes. So I'm really worried that the young people who have the consciousness based on social media are not being empowered by the rest of the country to really go ahead and we shall join you. And if that is not going to happen, then we might have to be Uganda and let Kenya be Kenya.
Benjamin Katana.
Unfortunately, Kenya can't be Kenya without affecting Uganda. Our goods go through there.
I think first of all is for the citizens to realize that pronouncements like that one from the police are normally what is expected in repressive systems. But to change that, the citizens do not have to comply necessarily. So my appeal is that the citizens must continue to challenge the attempt by any agency that is being used to frustrate the actions of citizens that are legitimate. But number two, and to depart from the opinion of my neighbor here, I think normally events that alter the course of history are many times unanticipated. Even in Uganda here, if you use the example of the NRA people, they did not go as 1,000 people to start what eventually led to the collapse of a government. In Kenya, they had just gone through what most of us applauded as a democratic process. Nobody anticipated that there would be such an uprising that now has brought them to where they are. And so is Sudan, and so is the rest of the... If you look at the Arab Spring, those governments were even more despotic than the ones we are dealing with, and some of them with the element of monarchy, that these people have lived with this monarch and the entire family reigning over them for thousands of years. But like I mentioned at the beginning, the events that alter the course of history normally are unanticipated. But also for citizens to know that the freedom, liberty, inclusion is never given as a gift. Most of the what we now call Bill of Rights and things of that nature, even where we copied or learned them from the British until 1688, the glorious revolution, the monarchy reigned as it wished, and the wishes of the monarchy were the rule of the day. But because people rose up and challenged that, they are where they are.
And Kapshenga's comment on not refusing dialogue with opposition, and now you ended up with NUP. So
well, that is his opinion, and the bastardization of NUP.
Pardon? Isn't NUP opposition?
The bastardization, maybe to mention that the bastardization of NUP is the bastardization that FDC received, the bastardization that every opposition group in Uganda has received. So for me, that opinion coming from
NRA being bandits.
Yes, coming from that gentleman, I don't think it even deserves my response. But the bigger message to the population is that letter from police, first of all, is a form of intimidation to tell the people that this is a roadblock that you can't go beyond. But freedom is not achieved through listening and complying with illegitimate and unlawful orders from representatives of a system that is repressive.
Mercy. The people are writing about you on Twitter, on X, formerly Twitter, and getting good mentions. And already I've had a definition here of corporate corruption from Ochom, who is delighted to share the Transparency International's publication of political corruption. So listeners, go on X and catch up. There's a lot of people listening and posting very, very quickly. So this Gen Z, I guess you'd seen the response from police already.
Yes.
And Agatha says they have also responded. Probably I haven't seen the response. So how will it end? Will they follow police and continue dialogue, as Dr. Mumza says?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. I've not seen a fearless group, and I've been privy to most of their organizing. Organizing in the sense that, raising consciousness before action, helping people understand the issue, especially the issue of corruption. What is interesting for me is that they are focusing on the issue, which is corruption. They are not about party. They are not discussing anything else. theirs is the issue, and they have their own structures. They've pulled me and a couple of other people into their discussions. For example, last week they wanted to learn from me and others who have participated in processes before, especially protests and others, what some of the learnings are, what they should be cautious about, and things like that, which I found really interesting. But they are moving forward with their planned actions. And as I've said before, and I'll say it again here, that you underestimate this generation at your own risk. We have not dealt with this generation before. We've been dealing with millennials and
because it was not there.
No, it wasn't. And it's not only because they were not there, that the context in itself is different. So how their organizing plays out may be in ways that we have not experienced before, and which can make it extremely difficult to manage. For example, in Kenya, we've seen violent protests before. We've seen so many actions previously. But if you look at the uprising now, dealing with it was very difficult for the establishment, because the way they organize, the way they share information, their demands and things like that were completely different. And so it was so hard to manage it the same way they were managing a generation before this one. And so it's not a good idea to undermine what they are planning to do based on past experience or otherwise. But it is also important that even while this has the potential of being foiled violently or otherwise, they would have awakened a certain level of consciousness in young people who probably over time have been on the sidelines looking for their place in transforming this country, especially based on conversations around corruption. These have often been resigned to probably civil society, politicians in the mainstream, political parties and all of that. But this conversation now going to young people, being centered and them understanding the potential impact it has on them, is an awakening that this country needs. Because for us to have the long-term inclusion that my brother Onapito talked about, that in Kenya there were other groups of people who were in solidarity with young people. For us to get to that place, this critical group must start by doing something, which they are doing now. And the least this will do is to awaken that level of consciousness. They will pick learnings, and I can tell you the political trajectory of this country will not be the same again after these planned actions.
I have noted how your tone even has gone up. Your choice of words, diction has improved. The passion has awoken in your voice. And listeners, that was, I'm on a show with my headphones on, so the one was chewing Star Cafe samosa was Ssemujju. So thank you so much.
Chapati.
Is there something we need to know?
No. That was Star Cafe samosa. So well done, Honorable Ssemujju. Thank you so much, Star Cafe. So Agatha, last comments on this. This they want to go to Parliament, and I should tell you, Honorable Sarah Pendi was also joining. Saying on X, formerly Twitter, the president recently called on citizens to join in the fight against corruption. If people prefer to express their opinions through peaceful demonstrations, I expect security to issue guidelines and provide security but not threats. The fight against corruption should be supported. So even people aligned with NRM perhaps support these things.
Quick one.
Pardon?
The beauty of Uganda is that before the young people go to Parliament, we might see them in State House first.
They might get an invitation to State House.
I don't know what he meant by that, but I'll inform you that they are already being convinced that someone wants to take them to meet the president, so there's no need for marching. But Oscar, I don't know why we have normalized illegal things in this country to continue happening. So like I said, the law is just saying inform police about your whatever procession or assembly, but police thinks that even with 2 cases that have been decided saying you have no right to prohibit, and that was in the case that Honorable Ssemujju was talking about by Mwanga Chivumbi, where Section 32 of the Police Act was nullified, because it was in essence saying that they should issue a permission. Recently, when Section 8 of the Public Order Management Act was also nullified, that was the same thing. And in those cases, the justices of the Constitutional Court were saying that this is a fundamental right, even on events like music rallies, concerts. Police is supposed, it cannot predetermine what will happen, whether there will be violence or not, because you notice that in that letter, they claimed to have intelligence that has showed them that there are some elements that want to cause violence. That's your job. Go and deter that violence from happening. So I think the young people are right, and like I said, they wrote back to them and said that we were informing you. We have not seen any other avenues. Even you, as police, when we asked, you didn't give us any avenues. I have seen now they are saying on X again that one of the representatives of police who is on Next Radio for a show is lying that they were not informed about the date. The date is in the letter. Is all sorts of
actually Agatha, the first response from police was that we have not been informed. And then they released the letter which showed that indeed they had even received communication from the group that is organizing.
Yeah. So they are saying you didn't tell us where you are going to meet. What do you care? We don't know the people that even want to march. For us, everyone will join from wherever their home is and join the march. Now,
so they are marching to take a letter to the speaker. Basically, that's it. It's a
protest. It's a protest. They want to. I don't know. The letter must have come in later. Initially, it was just a protest to show dissatisfaction about how Parliament is being run or is, appropriating resources. And they want to have placards. They want to wear T-shirts that is saying this and this has not been handled the way it should be handled. They have all these figures about monies that have not been accounted for. And initially that's what it was supposed to be, to protest how things are being run. I don't know if later they thought we want to take a petition to the speaker or to speak to her or the members of parliament.
So Agatha, you are having last word on the Capital Gang. What is it? Or should I ask?
Oh no, the last word.
Because sometimes when you have your last word,
I encourage everyone to march to Parliament. I am happy that even like you said, NRM stalwarts are saying, like and Saro Pendi are saying that they should allow people who are helping. We are essentially helping President Museveni fight corruption. That's what he says he wants to fight.
Yeah, you are helping President Museveni.
Yeah, he says he wants to fight corruption. It has become endemic. It has become.
You're not fighting him.
It has become a cancer. So both him and the IGG, they have asked us to join. So we are helping them.
So, she makes it difficult for me to allow her have a last word. Let Honor have last word.
No, Oscar, for me it's really.
How can I have that one as last word on gang?
I think we need a lot of soul searching. If at all Uganda still has
before you have your last word, I wanted to caution Mercy here when she said, "Honor my brother." I think you say, "Honor my judge." So
we need to discover our soul, because I think the level of cynicism in the country is quite worrying. Because often people will say, "Look, even those young people, if they were given a chance, what would they do?" Remember, President Museveni has said all at different stages in Uganda, the young people have been at play. Post-independence leaders were young people. The NRA were young people. Now if Gen Z also took power, are they going to change anything? So we need to ask those hard questions. To kill off the cynicism and give people hope that maybe the young people are really meaning it and not just seeking for a chance.
Thank you, gangsters of today. Honorable Ssemujju, Honorable Pito, thank you very much. Mr. Ekomoloid, yes. Mr. Katana, Mercy Munduru, Agatha with ER, Atohaire, and Dr. Muhumuza. Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners. Continue following us on our social media platforms. I am Oscar Semoya Msoke, and I shall see you next week.